Welcome to SolarFest Live. We're about to get started with this panel discussion on the plans for building a permanent home for SolarFest. But first, we'd like to thank both of our sponsors, GreenVest and High Peak Solar, for their years of support for SolarFest and for making this presentation possible. Based right here in Vermont, since 2004, GreenVest has made it easy and rewarding for people from all walks of life to invest following their personal values, from fossil fuel divestment to non-GMOs, women's empowerment to clean energy. See www.greenvest.eco, that's ECO, for more information. High Peak Solar is an owner-operated photovoltaic systems installation company, designing and installing residential, commercial, and community solar projects with strong commitment to quality, customer service, and attention to detail. Find them at highpeaksolar.com. Now, Janice Kurkowski will get us started with the discussion. Janice?
Thanks, Mike. Yep, and welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to listen in on this new and exciting next step in the life of SolarFest. About a month ago, a task force came together to find an appropriate home for SolarFest, a space we can call our own. So I guess you could call us a space force. In lieu of name tags, I'd like the people who have been working on this project to just raise your hand when I say your name. You can say more about yourself when it's your turn. So Joanne Coons, Paul Coons, Mel Tyree coming to us from China, and Steve Kurkowski. Not able to join us today is Todd Walker from GreenVest and Bill LaBerge from Grassroots Solar. We have already been hard at work. Over 100 letters asking for leads have been sent out to select boards and energy committees all across Rutland County and Bennington County. And we aren't going out empty-handed. A generous donor has provided some significant seed money to get us started. When Steve and I were first asked to participate in this task force, we thought, why us? You know, what have we don't even live in Vermont. But we've been to many SolarFests as volunteers and been inspired tremendously by the workshops, the people we've met there, and we've danced with lots of people. The music was great, but so have lots of other people. Steve and I help organize another really fun festival here in the North Quabbin area of Massachusetts called the North Quabbin Garlic and Arts Festival. It's now in its 23rd year. And the reason it keeps going, besides lots of energy from younger people, you know, that we've reeled in to help us, it's because we're in the same place. We're on a farm that a woman, it's a retired dairy farm, and she just wants to share her beautiful farm with the community, and it's just that's our home. And people know every year at the beginning of October, the end of September, that this is where they go to share their arts and crafts and music and dance and renewable energy talks and things like that. I mean, at one point we had 10,000 people come over the weekend. It's, you know, it's just a great thing. So this is what we want to bring home to SolarFest. I think if SolarFest had a permanent home, you know, it would be better. So I'm going to pass the mic on to Paul, and he's gonna talk a little bit more about exactly what we're looking for in terms of a site. So Paul, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is some of the slides. This is our vision for the SolarFest is having a net zero energy educational center with EV charging for a sustainable future. Next slide, please. This is a picture of our house that we renovated here in Clifton Park, New York. 1830s historic building, net zero energy. And the only thing we have left as far as fossil fuel is a grease gun and a can of WD-40. And all of that, basically all of that education we obtained through the SolarFest over the years. We first started going in the early 2000s and have tried to attend every year that we can. So let's pass on this knowledge to the other people that are involved in this glorious trip to try to solve the climate emergency that we're in. Next slide, please. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for some open land that we can set aside for camping. Next slide, please. And sort of a natural amphitheater that we can use to set up a stage and make presentations to the crowd. We're looking for approximately 20 acres of land with access to water and sanitary facilities. The sanitary facilities can be, for the time being, simply porta-johns, and if we have long-term buildings, then we'll have to get into different systems. But right now, that's what we intend. But we need to have a good, safe source of water or access to water. Next slide, please. And we need to have the system, the land accessible by major roads. We need to get the people in and out and in a safe fashion. Next slide. And we need areas for camping as well as for parking. That's why we're looking for the 20 acres of land, approximately. And we need to have it suitable for solar and small wind with electrical grid access on the site or nearby. Doesn't have to be three-phase, it can be single phase for the time being, but at least we have to have a grid access near the site or accessible to it. Perhaps with some existing buildings for meeting and workshops that we can use when we're on the site for the festival once a year, or for other educational meetings that we're anticipating in the future. And find a location in southern Vermont that wants SolarFest, that can form a partnership with us. We're looking at southern Vermont, but we're not dead set on southern Vermont, and we're open to other good ideas. We've, as Janice said, we've reached out to numerous people with the letters and correspondence. We've talked to landowners, real estate agents, and potential partners. And now I'd like to turn the rest of the presentation over to Mel in China.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. My name's Mel Terry, and like many of the other speakers, I'm also on the advisory committee searching for a new home for SolarFest. Although I'm doing this from China, where I'm working part-time after my retirement. Anyway, as with many people who've had anything to do with SolarFest, it's ended up being bringing about a big change in their lives, and it's certainly the case for me too. As a child, I was a very slow learner in grammar school, and I only got interested in school and then paid attention to it when I discovered in junior high that I liked biology and especially biology of plants. And then when I got into high school, I discovered that I could be pretty good at mathematics and physics and aspects of engineering. Electrical engineering was a hobby of mine. So I ended up in a career in which I didn't make a choice of disciplines. I decided to do everything I decided to try to study the biology of plants and figure out how they can function and be successful, given that they have to obey all of the laws of physics and engineering principles, as well as be living organisms. Anyway, because of my interest in the engineering and biology and physics, I became aware in my early career that mankind, if mankind didn't stop polluting the earth and burning a lot of fossil fuels, that there would be dramatic changes within a few generations. But I didn't really know what to do about it personally, you know, to enhance a sustainable lifestyle until I started working with SolarFest. Next slide. And what what started it all is that my wife, Charlene Miles, shown there, mentioned to me in about 2001 that she's always wanted to have a small wind turbine in her backyard because she grew up in a cold, windy place, and she thought that if she could make energy from the wind, it would be a nice compensation. And so she suggested we go to SolarFest because there were opportunities to learn some of the things that we needed to know, as well as having some fun entertainment. So for the first 2 years, we attended workshops about sustainable living and off-grid houses and photovoltaic systems, solar hot water systems, residential wind turbines, and I bought all sorts of books about these topics that were easily available at SolarFest. Next slide, please. And so we were living in Colchester, Vermont, where we had been for quite a while. And for the next 3 years, while we're planning, we're trying to locate some land. And it turned out the best opportunity was in Clinton County, New York, where land was still very cheap. We were able to buy 102 acres for less than $300 an acre. You can't touch anything in Vermont for 10 times that. But anyway, we bought the land, and there were no buildings on it. And the first thing I did, I had Sustainable Energy Development install a wind turbine. So that's showing the installation. And although we were living in Vermont, I installed a driveway and a future septic system, and hauled into site a construction trailer where I stayed when I was continuing to develop the property. Next slide, please. And one of the first things I did is I built what we call the barn that was going to have space for solar panels. But I had some experience with construction when I was, my early career, I was in Toronto, Canada, University of Toronto, and I was interested in doing studies of trees on a property owned by the Chippewa Nation of Native North Americans. And so we rented some land, as a lot of people did who had cottages, and I actually bought a cottage on rented land, and with the help of retired builders and engineers who lived there, who taught me how to do construction, I enlarged that property to build labs and offices, so I could do studies out there of the trees. And so from that experience, I was able to build that barn that you see there. And by 2005, we had the solar panels installed, and there's myself and my wife standing in front of the control systems that control that. There are also batteries there to give battery backup, because like a lot of people in Vermont, we had gone through a long period of power failures after an ice storm, and we decided we wanted to have battery backup in case that happened again. Fortunately, it hasn't, but anyway, we have it. Next slide, please. So we started building our final home in 2007, but I didn't have time to work on it. I was actually working in Western Canada at the time. So we had a professional builder do the job for us. The home has a ground sourced heat pump that provides heating in winter and cooling in summer. And as I said, we had a small wind turbine and photovoltaics, and it ended up, we produced enough energy to run the whole home 12 months a year with enough left over to charge up batteries on an electric vehicle and drive it 14,000 miles a year. The home has proved to be cost effective, or it proved to be cost effective to go net zero energy. You don't save a lot of money, but I found that over the 16 years approximately of operation, that the cost to build the facilities and keep them repaired, dollar for dollar matched, we would have paid for electricity and gas and oil or whatever we're going to use for heating. So it is possible to make it work, and it's possible to make it work at conventional costs. Next slide, please. In my work, I've had the privilege of because I study plants and I enjoy traveling, I use it as an excuse to work internationally. And I was eventually hired by the federal government as a senior scientist. And my main job was to travel internationally and work on research projects and bring back ideas and techniques to the federal government. So those are some of the countries I've worked in. But since I have gotten into building and living in net zero energy homes, whenever I travel anywhere now, I use it as an opportunity to meet new friends and tell them, my aim is to tell them what you can do on an individual scale to make the world more sustainable. And I've continued to have opportunities, like here's a trip I took to South Africa. A year or so after that, I got one of the biggest prizes I've had in science. I've had several national and international ones, but it was presented, called the Wallenberg Prize, presented by the King of Sweden during a two-day event in which I had to give 3 talks, and there was an international conference and banquets and all kinds of stuff like that. And I was excited enough from SolarFest about our future plans that I managed to work in talks about this. So I've continued, and whenever I have an opportunity when I'm traveling, working internationally, to just do my bit and explain to people that it is cost effective to live sustainably, and that we do have to move pretty quickly in the next few decades to go in that direction in a major way in all countries, and even China's doing it. So anyway, thank you for listening to my little story, and now I'd like to pass over to our next presenter. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel.
Mhm.
I'm Joanne Coons, and I'm here because I've been so inspired by SolarFest. It's really motivated me to continue the message, hear more of the message, and pass it along like Mel has been. And I share a lot of parallels, my story with Mel, because we were attending SolarFest in the early 2000s, because really we were planning and trying to figure out how we can divest or totally get off of fossil fuels in our daily living. And I saw some guys making biodiesel at SolarFest, and I'm a teacher, a science teacher, and I'm like, I can do this. So, I told my husband, hey, why don't we do that? And he looked at me, scratched his head, and he rolled his eyes and said, oh, gee, So we did some practice runs and made some of our own biodiesel. And I bought an old scrappy Jetta that was $350 in the want ads. And I was driving around in this thing smelling like, donuts and, Chinese food, et cetera, fish fries. And, it was working. And so we started looking at this and say, maybe we should kind of be more serious about this. And we did. We dedicated a winterized 8x8 section of our barn to just the processing of biodiesel. And that's what we ran our cars on. And in the wintertime, that's what we ran our house on. So it's all because of SolarFest that started planting seeds in our heads of how we can get off fossil fuels. Okay, so next slide, I believe. All right, so I gotta move my little screen here to read this. Okay. So what we want to do now is, we're being moved around, but we really would love to have a permanent spot because we could use it our one time a year like we do, but there's so many talented and gifted people that are willing to share their knowledge. We could really use this year round, do some training, spread the word, and have more of an impact if we had a permanent home. So that's really why we're here today to discuss, how can we accomplish that? Okay, so next slide, please. All right. Well, another thing that I really enjoyed about SolarFest was just I went there. I don't personally know everybody, but once you get there, you kind of feel like you're part of the tribe. You're like part of the whole experience. And you're around like-minded people, or some people that know more than you do, or some people that know less. It doesn't really matter. You're just there and you're comfortable. And it's an opportunity because we're all there to be inspired to learn and go forth and carry the message. And, if we did that year round, wouldn't that be cool? Not that we don't, but it's nice to have a home. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so a lot of the things that we've learned really have improved the quality of our lives and the lives of the people around us that we touch. Okay, next slide. And it has a lot to do with the urgency of global climate change and redirecting how we use our heat and energy. So, also in the spirit of SolarFest, there's music and art, which, I'm a science teacher, but I can't deny that doesn't feed the soul as well. And, it's a wonderful, inspirational thing to be dancing, to be singing, to be listening, and to be around positive people and feel their passion as they're playing their instruments or expressing themselves through different art forms. So you're really feeding the mind, body, spirit when you go to SolarFest, and it's a very nurturing experience. Okay, next slide. So why do we really need a home? Well, like I was kind of alluding to, that we don't just teach things there. We talk about advocacy. We have music, we have renewable energy, farming, transportation, just education, how to pass it along, food. There's also many different aspects of our daily lives that we celebrate and we teach about and enrich people's lives. And you always come away with wonderful ideas. Okay, next slide, please. So when I look at SolarFest, I can look at it from two viewpoints. What does it do for me? And from another viewpoint, what do we do for the people that we touch? And in looking for a permanent home and the community that we're going to be settling in, we really can bring to the table to those communities benefits that might be good for them as well as for us. So it's a two-way street, which is really cool. And we're not just give or take. It's really a unifying experience. So these statistics here are actually pretty interesting because it shows that we have potential for making an impact in the community that we settle in a positive way. Okay, next slide. And by securing that permanent home and a place which we always go to, it's not just for one weekend, but there is no place like home, to coin a phrase. So with that, I'd like to turn our presentation over to Steve Krakowski, and he'll wrap it up for us. Thanks.
So my name is Steve Krakowski, and I live with Janice in a small northwestern town in Massachusetts called Warwick. And I'd like to share with you how our personal history intertwines with the SolarFest history. In the early years, we had heard about this really cool festival in Vermont in the summer that our previous commitments did not allow us to go to. We were volunteering to go to Peru in South America with engineering students from the University of Massachusetts Lowell. I lost my place. Here we go. To install small solar systems in the mountains for villages that had no electricity. When that project started to wind down, we were then able to go to SolarFest at Forget Me Not Farm in Tinmouth, which you see a picture here of. We were hooked. Music, workshops, of which we presented at a few, and my personal favorite, Theater in the Woods, were some of the highlights. Next slide, please. So after that first year, we would volunteer a few days before, during, and after the festival and help out with whatever needed to be done, especially in the juice bar, which provided all the electricity for SolarFest. We had a great time, learned a lot, and schmoozed with new and old friends. It was a re-energizing event for me. What a wonderful home SolarFest had at Marshall and Melody Squire's farm in Tinmouth. A few years ago, though, they decided to move on and not host SolarFest in the future. So the next few years, SolarFest moved around to different locations. Then came COVID, and the entire world made a shift to virtual communication. Next slide. So here we are. This past year, a very generous donation has been received by SolarFest to help SolarFest find a permanent home. Our group, under the direction of our fearless leader, Michael Bailey, has taken on the task of finding that permanent home for SolarFest. We have started the ball rolling, as others have previously stated. As one of my colleagues has said, when we find our permanent home, the possibilities are only limited by our imagination and money. We are not asking for any financial help at this time. What we are asking for is your help in thinking about possibilities. Maybe you, a friend, or an organization, a relative, own a piece of land with or without buildings that could be SolarFest's new home, either through purchasing or long-term lease. Let us know and we will follow that lead. SolarFest has been a leader and educator in terms of how to slow climate change. So now, more than ever, it is vitally important to continue this work. The time to act is now. In closing, I would like to share with you some wisdom from a girl by the name of Dorothy who lived in Kansas. Next slide, please. There's no place like home. There is no place like home. There is no place like home. Thanks for listening. And now I will hand this over to our SolarFest Space Force Captain, Michael T. Bailey, who's been standing on the bridge tirelessly with a watchful eye and keeping the ship pointed in the right direction. Oh, Captain, my Captain. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, everyone. This is part of the excitement of this new home is we have such wonderful stories. We've all had such wonderful experiences with SolarFest, and now is the opportunity for us to make it permanent and expand. So if you're watching this at the SolarFest website, reach up and hit the contact button, get in touch with us. As Steve has said, any thoughts you have, any ideas, or any assistance you could offer, we look forward to having you be part of SolarFest's permanent home. Thank you all for watching.